I'll actually be quite sad to see them go from the league. We've had some good correspondence from Luton fans on the podcast this year, and they've played some really nice football at times. Rob Edwards is a coach that I think has gained a lot of credit this year again. In his young career, he seems to be inspiring many. And despite their relegation, the fans clearly showed amazing appreciation of Luton at the weekend. Rob Edwards was in tears himself. You saw what it meant to Morris as well when he was speaking after the game. It's a good connection they've got there. Luton then, where has it gone wrong for them? Because it seemed like they had a lot in place to make this actually quite successful.
I think if you look at the midpoint of the season, we've said for a few weeks, haven't we? I think we mentioned a couple of months ago that they've been picking points up for the odd game, but they've not been getting wins. They've not been transforming those points into wins.
They got what, 8 points out of their last 48 points available, which tail end of the season when you're fighting something like that, it is relegation form, sadly.
Yeah, I think obviously the last win came against Bournemouth, which was, I think, nearly a month ago now. And then the last league win before that was against Brighton, which they won 4-0. That was at the end of January. And that's a long time in football. You know, it's I know obviously we'll say it's only 3 months ago, but it is a long time in a lot of games. And I think a lot of that's been down to probably some of the injuries that have accumulated along the way. You look at that first 11, I think there's a lot of quality in there. I think they've done so well considering the lack of experience at the Premier League level. We said how well they've actually done, really, considering they were probably, alongside Sheffield United, probably the favourites to go down.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it was we didn't know what to expect from them, if we're being perfectly honest. And it's not just the injuries, but I think it's a lack of depth in the squad, strength in numbers. There's obviously some young players like obviously Tahith Chong who's actually come in and done really well when he's played as well. And I think it's a positive journey for them, because I think they'll look at going into next season, if they can keep a hold of a lot of those players, then they know what's required to come back up. I actually think there's a couple of 2 or 3 players in there they could get a lot of money for and reinvest.
We'll come on to next season, what they're going to do over the summer, definitely. I just think with this game in particular, then, the one that kind of put the nail in the coffin, and you mentioned that run, it felt like the things that were working really well for Luton earlier in the season started to diminish. Like they actually scored a fair few goals earlier in the season. Defensively, they looked sturdy in a lot of games. I mean, Kaminsky was outstanding for the first half of the season in particular. Osho and Mengi have looked really good. But then the second half, and more recently, they just looked like they're really struggling to create things. I mean, Barkley went off in the first half in this game, which didn't help them. But they looked really like they didn't know how to make that incisive pass into the final third. I think they only had one shot on target this whole game, and obviously Lokonga buried that, which was good for him. But what will Luton rue about their style of play? Like we mentioned, Burnley kind of trying to build things up from the back and struggling. Is there anything on the pitch that Luton could have done more? Because we know that the squad was limited, but were there times where the creativity perhaps was lacking?
I think you're right about Barkley. I think if you look at what he gives, that kind of thrust he gives to them in the midfield, they probably could have done with another player like him. To his ilk when he's not in the team. I think they do actually struggle to sort of create chances. So I think Alfie Doughty's been great at times as well. But you've got one experienced player in there, Ross Barkley, who's been in the Premier League for a lot. It's ridiculous. It feels like he's been around for ages. I think you need 2 or 3 players who've played in the Premier League, know the inside, know it inside and out, and are able just to pick the players up when they're in that slump. Because when
Townsend did that for a while, didn't he? But kind of lacked the ability that Barkley did at this stage of his career. So there's a balance, isn't there?
I think the difference to that, though, I think Townsend's over the hill. It's sad to say it was actually a great player for back in his Spurs days. I don't think he's quite at that level anymore. And it's shown with that, and those injuries have come back to bite them. We've seen it. I think Adebayo was a massive one. He gave them so much, and he's definitely been one of the players of the season for me. I think what he shows, he's been linked, hasn't he, these last few days, I think, to Leicester, which is an interesting one. But I'd like to see him stay at Luton, bring them back up. I think they've been a breath of fresh air.
So go on then, let's talk about that next season for Luton then. We said the same about Burnley. Do we see Edwards staying? And do we see Luton coming back up again? Because I thought it was interesting, Edwards' reaction after the game. He was very emotional by the reception he got from the fans. He mentioned that it had been an incredible 18 months and he was really grateful for that. There was, I don't know whether that, maybe I'm looking too much into it. It seemed like a bit of an undertone of, I might be moving on now. Can you see him staying on with Luton and trying to bring them back again?
I'd like to hope so, because
it'd be well sought after, though, I think.
If you look at the teams that are coming up, you can't imagine Leicester or Ipswich. No chance they're changing their manager. You know what?
Unless McKenna goes somewhere.
The McKenna's gone, and then it depends on who comes up. Now, really, you look at the rest of the coaches in there. You know, got some Premier League experience. They've got some know-how. So,
But could you not see?
It's difficult to see where it'll go, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, could you not see De Zerbi moving on and Brighton looking at Edwards as the perfect profile for their project or something like that, potentially?
I can't.
You think he would want to stay with Luton?
I think it's a big risk, and I think if you look at the way, I think if you look at the, like, for instance, the likes how of Brighton have ended the season. You know, but they've shown almost relegation form really in these last couple of weeks when they've picked some points up.
Yeah, typically to beat Villa.
I think it'd be a risk. I think he definitely to go on that journey and show he can do it again and get them promoted again. You know, it'd be another great story, and to get them into the Premier League and go through that whole journey again.